G'day everyone, this is Expand the Phantom podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com and you can subscribe to our podcast via YouTube or whatever platform you're listening to us at the moment. Make sure wherever it is you give us a rating and subscribe and all those things that every podcast tells you to do, because that's how other fans can find us if they're searching for Phantom related content on the interwebs. My name's Dan Fraser and today I'm joined by Stephen East and Jermayn Parker. How are you guys today? Stephen, start with you.
I'm doing well. I just timed that cough really, really well, as you were saying that. I'm doing well, Dan. It's been a good Phantom month for myself. I don't know if you remember that my big collecting goal was to get a run from 1,000 onwards, and I was able to do that. Then I was just going to go in the 50, so 950, 900. I think I've got them all now from 879 to current, so I'm pretty happy with my run at the moment.
Excellent.
And the 800s are looking okay.
Yeah, that's good when you can start ticking those goals back, hey?
Like it seems like it takes forever to get to the 1,000, and then yeah, the 900 and yeah, a little bit further than 900 seem to go pretty quick. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Excellent. So good, a good month to be talking Phantom for you as we go into, I should have said episode 276, our February and March comics and news reviews. So having a good February and March so far. Jerm, how's your Phantom month gone?
Pretty quiet, but yeah, this weekend I'm doing the list. I'm going through all my comics and finding all the gaps. So through the US ones and other countries, and trying to create a hit list of what I need to strike off and collect. So it's probably going to be my 2024 goal, is finishing some of the hit list.
Awesome. Yep, very good. You've got to identify those holes and tick some things off, don't you? So all right. Well, we've got a lot to talk about. There's 7 different countries that we need to talk about comics from. We've got a couple of months. February might be the shortest month of the year, but it's a leap year, so there's an extra day. So the pressure's on. Let's get into it. And we're going to start by talking about the Australian comics, because, of course, as 3 Australians, these are the first comics we see every day or every month as we go around. And the first issue we're going to talk about is Frew 1963. This one has got the cover by Grange Wallace. Grange was, of course, on our most recent podcast talking about AI, and I like to think, and I think you might have shown us this image actually, Germ, of the Phantom kicking some AI butt. Of course, it's a wraparound cover from Grange actually has him kicking some pirate butt. But anyway, it's a ripper of a wraparound cover. Let's start with that one. What did you guys think of the cover?
Well, I think the cover is great.
It looks a little bit washed out, but I'm not sure if that's like the design, but I think it might.
I thought that was like the fog in the mist.
Yeah, on its own it looks a bit washed out, but when you add in like the title and the other bits and pieces, it actually goes quite well. And the title and all the other stuff, and it works quite well. So I think it was probably by design how Grange did that. And yeah, the bad guy in the headlock looks a bit like you, Dan.
That's pre-beard perhaps, and I've got a little bit of the well, not in that shot, but I've got a little bit of a little bit of coating on top now. But yeah, look, I'll certainly take his biceps.
He doesn't have a skull mark either yet, so you might get spared of that as well.
Very good. Yeah, I agree with you when what you say about it looking fairly pale. But look, that's part of the beauty of the Phantom comics and the diversity of the covers, isn't it? Sometimes we get these bright yellows or bright blues. It's not like the Frews back in the 800s and that where you're at the moment, Steve, with your collecting. We see a lot greater range of cover colors and types these days, don't we?
Really good in the sense that it covers a wide range of what could be targeting, because like Frew, which we've discussed plenty of time, have to target the old farts, which are the ones that are older than us, and then you got to target the younger ones with the more dynamic covers and stuff like that. So these, having the wide range of artists from Grange to Lauren Marshall to a Paul Mason to even Antonio Lemus and stuff like that, there's such a wide range of different artists, and I think I do like that.
Well, this is a double bangers, a double story issue, as most of them are these days, and The first one is another Claes Reimerthi story. We must be getting close to having seen all of the Claes Reimerthi stories. Although we did mention last issue in a post recently that there still is a lot of Team Fundament stories that haven't been published, but this is a relatively new one, first published in 2020. So one of Claes's last stories before he unfortunately passed away, and illustrated by Anthony Spay. The false Jean Lafitte. Steve, can you give us a bit of a summary of the plot for this one, and then we can launch into reviewing it?
Thanks, Dan. So, following on from the adventures in John Lafitte's Treasure back in Frew 1957, Diana is pondering about the pirate become hero, John Lafitte, and the many myths and stories about how and where he died. The Phantom then tells a tale from the 13th Phantom, how certain members of Lafitte's old crew went back to their old ways. And in order to gain notoriety, they continued to use John Lafitte's name, dragging it through the mud, much to the disgust of John Lafitte's sister, the Mrs. 13th Phantom. Now, will the Phantom or his wife clear John Lafitte's name, or will his old crew tar his name forevermore?
I enjoyed this story. I'd always wondered, because like the pirates that became the Jungle Patrol is very similar as Redbeard when the first Jungle Patrol started. So I'd always wondered what would happen if some of the pirates turned their back and from the Jungle Patrol and became pirates again. And so that was the thing that I enjoyed about this story was it kind of answered that question that I've always had as a child. And I do like Jeanette as a character as well. She's got real spunk. There's one of the first stories when I became hooked in the Phantom was the Pirate Queen, where she had a duel with Marion Poe, I believe it was, back in Frew issue 1, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so she was the character in there as well, and she had quite a central role. So it was good to see Jeanette again. And Moonstone have done a couple of stories with her as well. So yeah, I enjoy her.
She seems a character that could be rich for stories, being the sister of a notorious pirate.
Mm. And she's not a shrinking
Julie.
violet. Yeah. Like you see her here where she's captured, but then she fights back, and then, later on she, escapes and stuff like that. So I enjoyed her as a character.
I think even just like there's a lot of the Diana about her, I suppose, in that she's probably unusual for 8 generations ago, being a woman who's just going to go and do what she sees fit. Phan goes disappearing for a month. He says, "Wait until I get back." He comes back and finds that she left the next day, and she's got a month head start on heading to the Caribbean before he has any chance. So, no, I agree with you, and I'm with you too, Jim, about the pirates from the Jungle Patrol stealing a Jungle Patrol ship. I like the idea that the Jungle Patrol is an organisation that has these fastest ships in the sea and that sort of thing, and of course then that is obviously going to be a target for the pirates to say, right, I want one of those boats to get around the ocean in. So yeah, very clever writing in that sense from Claes. What did you guys think of the artwork from Anthony Spay?
Hit and miss.
It made me think of the video game coming up.
I would be intrigued to see what it looked like in colour, but I think in black and white some of it looked a little bit hit and miss. Like this scene down here, which is on page 9 on the bottom left-hand corner, where you've got him on the raft, and it's only a small little panel, but there's lots of blue space and these little speck. I thought, like that, I really enjoyed that. There was the parts where he's in the tunnel. No, is it in the house and he's scaring the bad guy with the candle and stuff like that? Like some of that is great, but I think the Phantom looks a little bit robotic in some of the scenes, and he looks a little bit too overly muscular.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would probably reserve some of my judgment until I see it in color, because I think sometimes some of the art looks better in color than what it does in black and white.
I'd agree with you in terms of the depiction of the Phantom there. I actually think the artwork, in terms of, you say hit and miss, I think the hits are everything except the Phantom, and the miss is the Phantom. If you like his buildings, his landscapes, his every other character. Jeanette probably wears much tighter clothing than you might expect for that era. But every other character is really well proportioned, I think. And then you get to the Phantom, and he's just, times 10 in terms of the muscular, as you said, and even in scenes where he's just sitting on the skull throne or even getting fixed up by the doctor, he looks like he's flexing every single muscle, putting tension into every single muscle, even though he's at rest. So that would be, and I, as I said, this is drawn in 2020, probably drawn in 2019, really. So it's 5 years ago, and Spay's style will have changed since then. This would have been one of his early stories, I'm sure. And to your point about the video game, Steve, I think the artwork I've seen from that has the Phantom as a little bit more lithe, and he seems to have dropped the bodybuilding aspect that Spay's got him in with this story.
Yeah,
Going over it again just I can see your points, but I kind of missed it when I was reading through it. His muscles just like tightly wound springs ready to go. They're always tense
At all times, yeah.
at all times. You never know when danger's going to strike. You need to be ready.
True, I suppose.
Interesting point you made about Janet Lafitte. It's interesting because the Moonstone story and the story drawn by Cesar Spadera, and I'll show screenshots if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. In this story, she's actually a lot more modest than what she was in those stories. So I would actually say she's actually probably more dressed like someone from that. She doesn't have what's a PG?
Everything hanging out.
Yeah, she doesn't have everything hanging out like she does in some of those other stories. So
you still got a low cut shirt in this one. There just must be something about comic book artists that enjoy a woman's bust.
All right, it's probably a good point to move on.
I guess my last point about this one is just to do with the end. I think it ended really well, but it almost was like, again, and we've said this with these shorter stories, an extra 2 or 3 pages would have been nice. It felt like this needed to be wrapped up in a single panel, and so that's when the Phantom goes, oh well, let's just let the rest of the bad guys disappear. I've caught the big bad, and everyone else they'll be fine.
I actually liked that. Yeah, I didn't mind. I didn't mind. I take your point about sometimes it can be wrapped up, but I kind of liked about this where it's the end of it and then that was it, and we moved on, and and I think sometimes it's good to see the Phantom not dealing out as much justice to the letter of the law. Like a lot of those, not all of them, but a lot of them would have been like, well, if we don't follow this guy into piracy, he will kill us or whatever. And the Phantom's kind of like showing a bit of mercy. And so, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. So then we move into the 8-page story to finish off the book. And this is part 2 of Shane Foley's The Hanta Track, the part 2 of Bad Blood in Bangalla. Part 2 is called The Hanta Track. So, Steve, do you want to catch us up on what's going on in part 2 here?
So, after foiling the Leopard Man's attack on the travellers, the Phantom and Devil race ahead in an attempt to make sure he doesn't strike the remainder of the party further up the old Hanta track. But they're too slow. However, the Leopard Man has a great fear of Devil and springs away as soon as the wolf comes onto the scene. This allows the Phantom a little space to learn why this group is travelling in the first place. What is their destination? Why is the Leopard Man doing his best to stop them? Is the Leopard Man working for somebody?
Right. So again, getting back into the Hanta track, and it's a fast pace part 2 of this story. What did you make of it, Joe?
I watched one of the latest Marvel movies on the weekend, and it took me a while to try and piece together everything that I had watched from a year or 2 ago and try and figure out what was going on. And it was almost like that with this story as well. I had to think about, okay, so this is what happened last time, and then I had to read it and go, okay, so, and I was kind of like the Phantom. when the guy goes, "Do you remember me?" And I'm like, oh yes, and so like I was figuring it out, and then it was like, oh yeah, we're from the Golden People, we're from the LB, and I like on page 32 again, like the Phantom, Shane Foley, sorry, puts the stories in there, like, oh yes, this is what's happened, and yeah, there's a lot going on. I enjoy the story. I would love to see this story published together as one. Whether Frew get along to doing maybe they could do like a graphic novel with all of Shane Foley's stories or whatever, or do like. But it will be. I think this story will be done a lot more justice when whether I need to do it separately, but when I read all the parts together as one, I think I will enjoy it a lot more.
Mm. Yeah, I think there might be something to that. And how often do we say that about these three-parters or whatever that get published? I think this is a good example of one of those stories that might be better read together. But then you do get things like the Paul Mason's Nam stories, which you seem to be able to read once every couple of months, and maybe they're so independent of each other, or independent of each other enough while still tied together that it's okay. Whereas, this one, the Bad Blood story, seems to be one where that continuity would be make it easier to read. I think I find Shane Foley's stories, and this is a good example, almost so intellectual and so in terms of drawing on other parts of the Phantom universe that I almost find them hard to enjoy, because every panel I'm second guessing myself, trying to remember another character. How does this link in? And he's working on another level than I am, I think.
I feel the same, Dan. I reckon I was thinking when I was rereading it again today, I thought I need that fandom bubble open as I'm reading this, just to get all the links. And I'm sure Jerm knows all the links, but I'm thinking, what was it? And I really appreciated that little talking drum section.
Yes.
Like the editor's note. If you want to read more, check out these stories.
And he did that in the slave trader story in the 75th annual as well. I'm not sure if you remember that, where he did like an editorial page with some little spot illustrations, and that was really good, because it was like, and the thing that I like about some of these little bits is that you can get away without having to reread those stories, because it's it's I think he's done it better in this story than probably in the past.
What do you think of his artwork? I'm particularly drawn to his jungle scenes. I reckon his way he's depicting the jungle is quite fantastic.
Yeah,
very detailed.
Yeah, I love the depiction of the leopard men. Which, as you can see here, very action, big panels. He's done quite well. They look quite menacing. Devil looks quite terrifying.
I love that he never draws pupils. The Devil's always got just the glowing eyes.
They look good in colour. He's really, well, particularly in the first part of this, or first half of it, he's allowing the art to tell the story rather than the words. We've critiqued Shane in the past about being very wordy. And the second half, there's probably a lot of dialogue there. But definitely in the first half, he's allowing the action to tell the story, which is good.
I've enjoyed it. I'm enjoying it. I think when it's all published, I will go back and reread them all. And I think I will probably enjoy it more, because then I can focus on the little nitty little Easter eggs and the little gifts that Shane gives us.
All right, so through 1964, then it's back to the replica series, and this is the first time we've had Paul Mason get involved with the artwork of the cover. We know that the replica series has been drawn by Glenn Ford over the covers for that. He's been doing the covers for those, and in this one, and Jerm, I imagine you'll be putting these on the screen for YouTube watchers as well. We know that Paul Mason has actually done the penciling and the layout for this one, and then Glenn Ford's gone through and done the inks, which has created a really unique images style cover for this particular replica series. What did you think of the cover?
I thought it was interesting. I didn't pick the Paul Mason influence straight away. You look at it and you can see Glenn Ford's style, the way he does the phan's head and everything like that. Then after seeing Paul share stuff on socials. Oh, and actually, before I say that, I thought I really like the cover. I thought, oh, this is a nice one back then. Some of his have been really good, some of them really haven't. And I thought, oh, this one's a really good one, and it's dynamic. He's coming out at you, the putting the the top banner, the heading banner, kind of between the Phantom and the parachute behind, really really works, adds depth to it, and didn't pick at all that it was Paul Mason had anything to do with it, even though there's a very very big giveaway. And as soon as I saw that Paul had done it, then I noticed the huge hint, the huge giveaway that Paul had anything to do with it, which is of course down the right hand corner and a couple of birds.
Yep.
But I completely missed that on the first look at, because
Yeah.
I was concentrating on the Phantom more so than these white clouds or whatever that was going on. I missed the birds.
I guess the signature series it will be interesting whether they get both Paul and Glenn to sign it for the signature series. I kind of hope they do. So it might be a little bit more effort getting 2 signatures on each comic, but I think it will make the signature series a little bit more, especially of the signature series of the collector's issues, which aren't that collectible for a lot of fans. It might make it just that little bit more appealable having 2 signatures on it.
Yeah. And look, they've both artists have been credited on the inside cover.
That was good.
When I saw Paul's post on social media, I thought, oh, I hadn't realised that it was both. So that's when I went to the credits and see, on the inside front cover, it is credited to both gents. So that would make sense. I hadn't thought of that, but I hope they do get it signed by both of them. In terms of the stories, we've got 3 Lee Falk and Wilson McCoy stories, Wrestling Tourney, Ragon's Game, and The Lady from Nowhere, all of which are classic stories, all of which I love. But traditionally, we don't go into a deep dive on those ones, and are probably not inclined to today, unless anyone's got anything particular to say about them. No, so let's go straight into Frew 1965 then. Now, I love this cover by Luca Alberta. I always love his work, and this one, is an absolute ripper. YouTube watches you seeing it on your screen as we speak, but just the pose, the colours. I talked about yellows when we talked about the cover for 1963. The yellows in this, the greens in this, the lighting, the stance of the Phantom. I'm a big fan of Luca's work.
This was an original that he was selling, and last time I checked, I don't think it was sold yet. And I believe there's this one and another Team Phantom Man one in a similar style that he hasn't sold yet. So if you are a buyer of original artwork, hit him up on social media, and he would have at least one, maybe even 2 of original artworks to buy. And then if he has sold them, talk to him, tell him that you are interested, and he can probably write your name down, and next time he has one for sale, he can probably get in touch with you.
It's a wonderful story, but the story within it is something different.
Wonderful cover. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so I already suggested that we were going to have the third part of Bad Blood in Bangalla, so we know that that's in there, Witch's Way by Shane Foley. But the main story is Press Service. It's a Fratelli Sparta story with Senior Pratisi as the artist. Steve, why don't you give us a bit of a look at what the plot of this one is?
So a couple of junior journalists are trying to make it big, but are getting nowhere fast with their editor. Through happenstance, they come across a reference to the Phantom legend and decide to follow the story to Bangalla for the scoop of a lifetime. Unfortunately, those who are out for revenge on the Phantom see these journalists as their ticket back into the proximity with the Phantom so that they can finally put an end to the 400-year-old man. Will that person succeed? Will the journalists win the Pulitzer for their story? Why would the Phantom want to be on the front page of a newspaper anyway? Is he thinking of changing his methods?
Now, look, I'll put my hand up and say I haven't had the chance to read this story yet. Some slight issues with the arrival of my subscription, those issues being my slackness in renewing it. And so the comic hasn't arrived here yet, but that sounds like a really good plot for a story. We can certainly see that being something I'd want to read. How does it stand up when you actually read it?
I have issues with this story. I want to start off with the positives, and then I'll talk about what I don't like about it. The artwork I really enjoyed. there's little bits in here like like where this guy tries to kill the Phantom, and it kind of shows you, what the spring blowgun and that, and then like the overall plot. I enjoyed that type of aspects. The Phantom that's portrayed in this story and the way the Phantom is portrayed is not my Phantom that I like. The Phantom behaves a bit like an ignoramus. Like you've got these people that for some reason, and I don't quite understand it, and I think that's a huge plot hole of why they all come to the Skull Throne or to the Skull Cave, to the Deep Woods, and you've got people that are showing their students, and that just seems a bit of a plot hole. Then you got this guy that's trying to kill the Phantom, which it's almost like they're trying to make the story too confusing and too many twists and too many plots, and the story probably could have just been better if it was just simpler. Like you've got these journalists that are trying to find the Phantom, and when the Phantom tries to fool all the simple folk and has the journalists drop down and be destroyed, but not wanting to, hide that fact so he doesn't upset the natives and stuff like that. I didn't really like that. I thought that was a little bit too white saviorish.
It harkens back to that old, was it the skull that comes out of the ground back in that
Yeah.
Leaf story, and the flying horse and all that sort of mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, and then you've got all that type of stuff, and then you go to this cave which has never been mentioned before, and I get very, very, and everyone knows that I get upset when people invent tribes. It's like they are inventing these areas which don't need to be invented. There's almost like 3 or 4 stories that are jumbled together as one. And then you've got the main bad guy who we never actually see again.
He gets rubbed out fairly quickly, doesn't he?
Yeah, and then it's just they go into this tunnel and there's weird elephants, and the boy becomes a man, and so there's, I don't know, it's a mess.
I see it was first published in 1968, so it's nearly 60 years old, 55 to 60 years old. To what extent is it a product of its time? Lee Falk stories from the 1960s were actually pretty good. That was when Cy Barry was taking over, the first 5 years of his run. I would say that Lee Falk stories from that time were excellent, really, and he had certainly moved past the mumbo jumbo type things that Steve was talking about there. What are your thoughts there? Is there a danger to having these 60-year-old stories being the lead story in a regular issue comic?
Not if they're good. If they're a good 60-year-old story, then it can stand the test of time. Or even if it is a product of its time, it's okay. This isn't good.
Yeah, and we have seen some okay Sparta stories. Like there was the sequel to the Shark's Nest, which you had Big Steve, not our Big Steve, or who used to be Big Steve, and is not Big Steve now, but the other Big Steve from a Frew comic. And I think it was the Baron. So you've had that. There's been some enjoyable Sparta stories, but this is probably the worst Sparta story that I have read.
One of my big criticisms I've saved for the next Sparta story that we're going to do, so I'll hang off until then. But something that I feel bad for is the backup stories in these. So in this case, it's Shane Foley's Bad Blood in Bangalla. After reading that story, I was in two minds. Is it because I didn't like it, or was it because I read the comment from Germ saying he didn't like it for starters, and then that put me in a negative straight away. But I think it was rubbish. But yeah, after reading that the Italian story, I then read the Shane story, and I was in such a negative frame of mind after reading press service that I think it affected how I read Shane's. So being the professional I am, I did go and reread Shane's story today. So yeah, because I was thinking, oh geez, that's rubbish too. This was just a crap issue. The cover's good, and that's about it.
And, okay, so you said this is 1968. So you've got roughly 30 years of the Phantom being created by here. And this is the danger of having people creating stories who do not know the Phantom. You know, I'll take the credentials that will allow me safe passage past the bander, and then you have a look at it, and it's the good mark, the skull, and then it's got 761. Like, what has that got to do with what's 761? The good mark has been around since the 50s, so it's been around 15 years minimum before this story was created. And you know, it's just like, and this is one of the things that I hate about, well, I'll use the word hate, that I hate about some creators, is they feel such a need to make their mark on the Phantom that they invent lore without actually knowing the Phantom. It's like, okay, yeah, you know, I understand that people want to make their mark. And, you know, I'm all well for that, because you got to make your mark to be able to, so people can enjoy your stories and you get more stories, so you get paid. And, you know, I understand that. But when you're deliberately turning your back to the Phantom established lore, you lose me. And I start losing respect for you as an artist. Now, I know this story is 60 years old, but I think it's still the same as today, is that
That's pretty much my criticism, which I'll be saying after the next story too. But I've got different examples, so I'll save them for then.
But like, you know, like, look at the art on page 10, where you've got the lighting effect and the jungle and the skull.
I think the artwork's fantastic.
Yeah. So
just the storytelling is rubbish.
Yeah, I'll discuss. We won't go too much. I think we'll move on. But when we do the giant size, I want to kind of talk a little bit more about the Sparta stories, which I think Stephen does as well.
Well, you guys have done very well out of that, because in the notes on our run sheet, pretty much the notes say this story is crap, and you guys have got a lot more time out of the podcast than just that 4-word note. So well done, boys.
You can see a little poo emoji there as well.
Exactly, yeah. That picture is worth 1,000 words. All right. So let's move on to part 3 of Bad Blood in Bangalla then, which is Witch's Way. And is this part 3 and the last of the 3 parts, or does this finish out the story?
No, I reckon this is probably going to be a 6 to 8 parter.
Yeah, right. Okay. So Steve, can you tell us what chapter 3 is all about then?
Okay. So after ensuring that the travellers are safe in the stone fortress of the LB, the Phantom sets off in search of Dr. Clark, while also sending out a message over the jungle drums asking for any help finding Dr. Clark. Soon an ominous warning comes over the drums. No more talk of Dr. Clark or she dies. Though the drums do fall silent, the jungle people still continue to help the Phantom, guiding him on his journey and pointing out people of interest. Can the Phantom get to Dr. Clark and her husband before it's too late? Or will she come to an untimely end just because she supported Laloria's thirst for knowledge of the outside world? Now, if you don't know who Laloria is, hopefully you've read the part 2 where she is introduced.
Now, refresh my memory. Dr. Clark, does anyone remember who she is?
Nope.
No. That's where you come in, Jem, where you get to say the stuff.
I remember this bad guy. What's his name? Is it
I keep thinking of
or something?
I know it's not her.
Oh, Shane will be giggling himself right now. She's from the Valley of No Return, where they find that sleeping powder, I think, from memory, which is where the Phantom falls.
Oh, well, that will tie in.
Yeah. And then I believe
On Forbidden Land.
Yeah, the Valley of No Return or something like that. It's a lot of fans will remember it because in that the Phantom wears a mask, and so there was actually some fake news where people had superimposed the Phantom wearing a mask and saying, "Oh yeah, we must mask up so we could stay away from the flu." I won't say the country or the other bits. I'll keep it kind of more professional.
It came out sort of midway through 2020, didn't it? When there was all of these worries about, well, obviously genuine worries about COVID, but then conspiracy around masks and conspiracy about who invented the virus and all that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
no, and you know what? And maybe Jeremy, you may or may not want to put the meme up on the screen for the YouTubers to see. But as much as anything, I actually liked the fact that phan became relevant and was being used, albeit in a nefarious way at the time. But it came back to a bit of relevance.
And
Yeah.
I just I just found and wiki the Valley of No Return, and it doesn't mention Dr. Clark unless of course her name's Anne. But it does mention the Tessai, so which the Tessai Valley is mentioned in here in this story. So of course Shane always does his homework and he knows what he's doing.
Well, as I say, Shane's always working on a level 3 or 4 ahead of us.
Yes. Yes. But I liked how, the Phantom comes in and then he's like, oh, what's going on? Hang on. And then he's like, oh no,
I remember now.
the thing that
What
I
is it? Oh, we got to go back and we got to remember now.
the thing that I enjoy about his stories are the cliffhangers. And I think that's the beauty about these stories being parts, is that at each end of the story there's a cliffhanger, like the old serials and the old TV shows and stuff. So I think he does do a good job with that, and that's one of the ways that it works well as a multi-part story.
All right, let's move on then to so that brings us up to date with the Frew regular series and brings us to the most recent Giant Size. Now we're going to get the opportunity to talk about another Fratelli Sparta story there, but I think the big news out of the Giant Size number 28, of course, is that this is the first of the Giant Size books in the second series that has got a cover by anyone other than Glenn Lumsden, and so we see it from John K. Snyder III, who has a piece of published Phantom artwork before, actually in the Chronicle Chamber Bushfire book, for those playing the trivia game at home. So this will take some credit for getting him onto the map, I suppose, of Phantom artists. But in terms of this Giant Size cover, I think it really harkens and uses the Glenn Lumsden template of how to create these covers quite effectively.
It does. Interesting whether he's using trunks or not, the Phantom, and he's purple again, so we can't quite tell if he's wearing the old school trunks, but you're right, it has that Giant Size feel.
It's simple and effective, but it is missing a sense of fun, which I think a lot of Glens have. They're playing cricket, or he's reading the paper, or he's driving, and all that sort of stuff. But as a first cover, I do like it.
Yeah.
And Glenn did take a while to warm into those more fun covers as well. He certainly had some of these almost poster type or movie poster type covers to begin with as well.
Yeah, talk about posters. This would actually be if you could, obviously get rid of the top banner stuff, maybe get rid of Planet Man down the bottom. But if you did that as a poster, that would, probably be quite effective for Supernova.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Actually, I take your point if you were going to produce it as a poster, but the inset of Planet Man, I think, really works for a cover, because the Planet Man, once you open it up and read it, that story is the only new one. The other characters are all retro stories. And Shane Foley's got a Planet Man story in this one as the new one. So I think as a hint towards that, it works effectively for the cover anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say, you made mention of John Snyder's work being in the Bushfire book. So this is actually the second time that an artist has been portrayed for the first time in the Chronicle book, and then their second piece has actually been on an actual Phantom cover. And the first one was Vincent Raja Moses from India.
And he's a Chronicle Chamber for uncovering these artists for free.
That's it.
I'm sure the checks in the mail from Frew as part of our finder's fee.
Oh yeah, hell will freeze over before that happens.
All right, so we like the cover, and it'll be interesting to see if John K. Snyder now gets to be the ongoing artist, or for a giant size, are they going to try out a few different artists to see what styles work, and then go? It's uncharted territory now that Glenn Lumsden has stepped away, and we it'll be interesting to see who's on the cover for giant size 29 when that comes out.
Mm.
All right. So then we get into the book, and obviously, as we are a Phantom podcast, I've already alluded to the fact that there's a new Planet Man story in here. We're not going to review that one because it's we're not a Planet Man podcast. There's also a Sir Falcon, a Panther, and a Shadow, which are all interesting reads in their own right. But we're going to focus on the Phantom story, which is called The Assassination of the Phantom. It's a 1973 Fratellis Sparty story. So again, an older story. What's that? 50 something, 51 years old. With the art of Angelo Todaro. It's interesting they don't know the authors of these stories. Both of them have been attributed to unknown writers. But I must say from the outset, the art of Angelo Todaro, and we've seen some of his work, much more recently than this. Gee, he's a good artist, and clearly has modelled himself after Cy Barry. There's no doubt about that. But I really like his artwork.
And I think this has happened every time at least recently, in recent memory, about the Fratelli Sparti stories. We're not dissing the art. The art is really, really good. And yeah, this guy's obviously taken his lead from Cy Barry. But yeah, once again, the storytelling might be a little bit worse for wear. Not as bad as the other one, though.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Steve. It's not as bad as the other one. Do you want to do the plot, and then we'll praise it and critique it?
Okay, so the assassination of the Phantom. The Phantom receives quite the shock when an unexpected package arrives at the Skull Cave from an admirer. At the same time, a survey vessel is approaching the Longo coast, ready to reap any oil from their land. With not a Longo warrior in sight, it might seem like smooth sailing for the crew. However, Devil has a gift of his own.
For those who are looking on YouTube, you'll see this guy here. Does everyone remember him?
He certainly looks like a Cy Barry character. You've written here, Popsy from Wharf Rats. I 100% accept that premise, because he certainly looks like a Cy Barry big bad, and Popsy from Wharf Rats makes as much sense as anything.
Then there's these guys.
Why wouldn't it
here. These is from Bullettstown. So you've got, his name was Pretty, and I can't remember the African's guy. So they're pretty much a dead ringer from them as well.
I've just Phantom Wiki Popsy, and yeah, he's a dead ringer.
Yeah. So if you're on YouTube, we'll have panels of those alongside these, so you can kind of have a look at it and go, oh yeah. And if you're on if you're listening to it on an audio only, you just have to take our word for it. I liked what Devil did in this story. I thought it was quite clever. He's more than just a sidekick in this story. He's
Yes,
pretty much the hero. The art's not the best from the Fratelli Sparta stories that I've seen, but it's it's good. The assassination attempt was a little bit cheesy, but
yes.
You reckon?
Yeah, but I didn't.
It came straight from the plot of a Get Smart show.
It didn't bother me too much. There's another story. What was it? The Wedding Gifts, which was about the Hatner Witch. I remember we absolutely canned that story, but it was very similar as that, where some mysterious presence rock up that, like seriously, how do people know where to send this stuff?
Well, that's part of my critique.
Well, surely the second part of the critique is, if you're the Phantom and a mysterious package arrives with a note saying from an admirer, do you just go, oh, wow, that looks awesome, I'm going to make full use of that as intended, and it's not going to cause me any danger at all?
It would have to be Dinah. She's my only admirer.
Who else?
my big thing with these stories is I don't like how all the authorities seem to know who the Phantom is and where the Skull Cave is and whatever. The delivery fellas, this is for the ghost who walks. Leave it at the band, whatever. How the hell does Popsy know about this? And we've seen it in stories. If I remember correctly, it was a story last year where the Phantom ordered Colonel Weeks to bomb the plane in front of the Deep Woods, or in front of the Skull Cave, or something like that. Connolly's has no idea what that is, or he shouldn't.
Yeah.
That irked me back then. It's irking me again now. It seems to be exactly what you were saying before, Jim. My biggest gripe with these Fratelli Sparta stories is how against the commonly held law they seem to be, at least to me anyway.
Yeah. No, agree. Look, I think there's a place for Fratelli Sparta stories to be published by Frew, and we're going to get into that a little bit later in the news section.
The giant size is fine.
Yeah, maybe 1 or 2 hours down the track. But yeah, that was my point, is that I think for the Fratelli Sparta stories, same as the Charlton and King stories from the US, keep them with the giant size, because the giant size is all about those type of old and classic type of stories. You know, the ones that our parents and grandparents read is where they belongs in a giant size.
Yeah, that said, as luck would have it, it was not luck, but anyway, my dad had to spend some time in hospital about a fortnight ago, and on going in to visit him, I actually picked up the giant size Phantom as a gift to say, here, you know, this will be something you can read. And my subscription copy had arrived, but I hadn't read it yet, and I picked this up at a newsagent to give him. And after I got home and then read it myself, I thought, really should have given him the replica series 1964, which had come out. I think he would have enjoyed that more than this giant size. So I think those old Lee, Falk, Wilson, McCoy stories would have appealed better than an Italian story that is a bit cheesy, as we've said. So,
yeah.
And look, there's nothing wrong with a bit of cheese. My big gripe is how against the law it goes.
Yeah,
that these stories go.
Yeah, no, fair. All right, so we've gone through all of the Australian comics now, and certainly we've got some reviews from other comics from around the world. And once again, thank you so much to these guys. Mikkel from Sweden, reviewing the Team Fantomen stories. Christian from Germany, going through the stories that the comics that he's seen there, and we know that there's 2 or 3 different publishers that are producing stuff there. So thank you very much, Christian. Once again, of course, we're looking for any reviewers who are from Greece or France, Hungary, Brazil. If you'd like to review those comics for us, so you're listening in, going, well, where's my local content? Please start providing it for us, because we'd love to share your views on your comics with everyone else in the fandom world. So that said, and without any further ado, let's start globe-trotting and hear from these guys as they review their local comics.
Fantomen Review.
Time again for some Fantomen reviews. Starting off with issue 4 of 2024 with this cool cover by Luca Arbara. I think he used a different style than he usually does. It's like really sharp lines in the faces and so. Love the coloring. I'm no expert though, maybe this is his usual style, but yeah, I think it looks a bit different. The main Phantom story of this one is The Message, Team Fantomen classic with the origin of the good Mark. And I was always a bit confused with this one when growing up, because now I'm doing spoilers here in the end, but yeah. So when the Jungle Patrol, they jump on this chandelier, and it clearly has the good Mark type, but then he presents it as the 4 sabers, and that's the new design. But it's I'm a bit unsure, but maybe that's just me. Then we have a shorter Frew story. It's called Return of the Eastern Dark, Shameful Trade by Duncan Monroe and Daniel Picciotto, I'm unsure. Yeah, the first story was by Norman Walker and Kari Leppinen. Yeah, I mean, the art in both of these stories are great, but very different styles, as you can see. And it's short but sweet, as they say. That's issue 4. Then we have issue 5, cover by Henrik Sahlström. and this is the second this year, but it was supposed to be last year with the depicted story that we'll go through. But as Andrea says here, it was planned for last year, but there was some issues, so the deadline for that issue was not met, so we'll have it now instead. So it doesn't have an English title yet, but if you translate the Swedish one, it would be something like Broken Tusk, and that's this elephant. It's called Broken Tusk because he has a tusk that's broken. Yep. And art by Anthony Spay and Brian Atkins, and story by David Bishop. An elephant never forgets, as the old saying goes, and this elephant does not forget the humans that wronged him. The Phantom is mostly on damage control and tries to warn the spoiled people that lived in this gated community, but they will not listen to him, and yeah, that's basically the story. I, as I said before, I really love the art, and it looks like it's a light story, and I enjoy it. And then it is the side story of The Poisoner with a new album, Guts. Yeah, this series has really taken the top spot for me of the side comics in Fantomen. It's amazing, and I can't really wait until I get to read more of it. But I don't have to wait that long, since here is issues 6 and 7 that has the concluding part of that album. It also has this amazing cover by Henrik Sahlström, and like this is the third cover this year, and so it looks like he's back from the hiatus, since we didn't have covers from him all of last year, I think. And I think we're all happy for that. I mean, this would look great on a poster, wouldn't it? And except, I mean, besides getting the conclusion of The Poisoner, we get Phantom's End by Tony DePaul, Mike Manley, and Scott Kuhn. So another part of this 21st Phantom life. I think this part is the strongest one yet, or one of the strongest at least. I really enjoyed reading about Kit being this freedom fighter, and to see the fate of 21st. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool for this arc. And then we have one more Phantom story. We have The Last Sunday that Lee Falk wrote, The Kidnappers. Elizabeth Falk did the end of that one. George Olsen and Fred Fredericks did the art, and it's not great, I would say. And at least here in Sweden, the Swedish clue she gives in TV doesn't make sense at all. She has to pronunciate R, and from that the Phantom understands that she's at the railroad crossing Rasa Rasha. Yeah, I'm not sure. And last part is this, that you can vote for the best cover of 2023, Fantomen cover that is. And there's an article about that in Chronicle Chamber's website. You should check that out if you want to participate. And for the next issue we will have a reprint of a Team Fantomen one. I'm not sure what it's called in English. The Demon's Image. The Demon's... yeah, it takes place in Sweden. And it is a Uppsala special, so that's the town just north of Stockholm. And then we have a new adventure, Under the Burning Sun of Granada, by Peter Menningen and Jose Maria Ortiz Tafalla. Oh, I wonder if this one is from the Great Britain comic Lightning Strikes. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, but let's see. It's not that far until 4th of April. So thank you for listening and happy phantoming.
My name is Chris. Today I review the Phantom Zauberstern comic number 11. It costs $9.99, in Austria $10.99, in France $11.50, and in Switzerland $12.50. And we have today Händler des Todes Teil 1 und 2. It's called in English Guns Part 1 and 2. Then second story, Die Weisheit des Alters. It's the Moose Snappers or the Jungle Gang from Tourney de Paul. And third story is Einstein Junior, the college kid. And we start with Der Händler des Todes Guns Part 1. It's a DC comic from 1989 from Mark Verheiden and Luke McDonnell. It's from 1989. Like I said, it's a long story in this magazine. And I show you the painting. I like this dark styled comic much. And we start with Händler des Todes Teil 2, Guns Part 2. And the reprints is today only in Brazil, Germany, Norway, and of course United States available. And I like the paintings very much. The story is awesome. And the quality of the paper is always good from Zauberstern Comics. The printing quality is also phenomenal. And yeah, it's a really nice story. And that we're the fourth country to get the story is also awesome. Then we start with the Tourney de Paul story. It's from 2007. In the magazine it calls 2006, but if I'm right, it's 2007. But let's start with the comic. Die Weisheit des Alters, the Jungle Gang or the Moose Snappers. This comic is a daily strip, number 219 from Tourney de Paul, and also the printing quality and the colors and the story is awesome. I like it very much and enjoy it. And it is released in many countries of the world: El Salvador, Norway, Mexico, Jamaica, India, Sweden, Turkey, United States, Australia, the Bahamas, Denmark, Finland and Germany. Then we start with Einstein Junior, the college kid. It's a 232 daily story from Tourney de Paul and Paul Ryan. And I see it starts with panel number 5. Also the magazine missed something. And the story is also cool with the kid, and I like it very much. Also, Zauberstern is doing a great job with this comic. All fine printings, colors. They did an awesome job for $10, 100 pages of comic. The next magazine is arrived 9th of April 2024. Then we have a big picture, some advertising from Cult Comics, which also bring Phantom Comics out, and the known back cover. Thanks for watching.
Okay, thanks very much, guys, and really appreciate hearing your thoughts. And once again, if you are missing the reviews from the stories in your part of the world, please get in touch, and we will love to include those as well. These comics and news reviews podcasts are not long enough. We know that, and we'd love to get a bit more content in if we can. Now, one aspect of the fandom that we know is truly international, and no matter where you live in the world, you can access these, is the daily and the Sunday stories. Daily number 265, The Chain, has been progressing. My jury is now so far out on The Chain that I can barely see it. I don't know about the way this is going. Who would like to give us an update as to the story so far, where we're up to, and what you think about the way it's going?
So the Phantom has now finished telling the story of his dream, which was the chain, as we know it, with his own little commentaries thrown in every now and then, which highlight a number of holes or a number of.
Let me just quickly jump in. I enjoyed the holes of the plot of the original story being pointed out. I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
I'll let you continue.
Yeah. Such as you have this fantastic hero who would do anything to break out of prison, not being guarded at night. Anyway, where was I up to? Oh yeah, he's finished telling his story, not only to Diana but to Kit as well. And now Kit kind of wants to head off back to India, but he figures out that he should go and visit his sister over in Malvertown. So he's on the trail with the phan to head into town to go to his sister. He knows that they're trying to play a bit of matchmaker with him. He's got his eyes on Manju, and if only you could meet him, Dad, he says to the fans. He goes, maybe one day I will, son. And we all know how that might turn out, maybe. But now as they're on their way, something has caught the Phantom's attention. We're not quite sure what it is. Will Kit come and join him? Because I reckon Kit might figure out that whatever's got Phantom's attention must be important. All right, there's something happening up in the woods. Here we go. We're going to the darkness now. So this is coming up. Will Kit go and join him and kind of join the Phantom line? Will he move away from Manju and go towards Cardia? Yep. And well, as we can see here, he's coming. He's given Devil a pat, and he's not leaving the Phantom side.
I like how I would like to see an adventure with the two of them. I'm not sure where it's going, or I have no clue where it's going. But the fact that the 22nd Phantom is now on an adventure with the 21st Phantom, I don't mind. I
think that's good. It's not the first time that father and son have gone together.
But I got no idea where we're going. Like, where are we heading off to?
We do
that's
seem
good.
away from the telling of the chain story, don't we?
There's a definite. Okay, that was the story. Now we're moving on. Like, I was thinking, oh wow, we're wrapping this up quite quickly. This might be a short adventure. I know the last podcast I said, I got a sneaking suspicion this story is only going to be a short one. You two laughed at me.
Right to do so.
Yeah, well, it could have quite easily. Look, it could have quite easily been one. Like, for instance, look at it here. Okay, where was that story ending? Here we go. So that story was ending, the 21st of February. They've kind of stopped that story, and then they talked about another story, which was the Jungle Trek back in 2006. So, so the story could have been ended by now, and we could have gone on to the next part. But I got no idea where we're heading.
Yeah, look, I've been enjoying it more since we've moved away from the ragging of the chain story. I'm probably, I don't comment a whole heap on Facebook and that sort of stuff, but I probably agree with some of the crotchety messages there, to be honest, about not sure why we have felt the need to go back and pull this one apart. I hear what you're saying, Jerm, about liking the way that you've seen some of those holes exposed in the chain in the old story, the 1950s Lee Falk story. I haven't. I haven't seen. I remain to be proven wrong, but I haven't seen the purpose behind that yet. And it just seems, and and knowing Tony DePaul and the way that he operates, I know for a fact that he's not just going back to do it because he didn't like that particular story and he wants to prove to everybody what a crap story it was. There will be a point to that, to what he's done, and I look forward to seeing that. But as it stands so far, all of those stories together with, I think Brett Blevins' art is really standing up, but timed at the same time as we've got a new artist coming on board that people aren't sure about. I just think this story has been a little bit more missed than hit so far.
Yeah.
See, I think he's this story is all about what makes the Phantom a Phantom. Now, he's highlighted these holes that are in that first one, and they were talking about Phantom being a silk crybaby, crotchety person, all that sort of stuff. And then, in the story, he's not even trying to escape. You're doing all these things that really aren't Phantom-like. Then he tells this story, Kit rather tells the story of, climbing up this cliff face, and everything was very Phantom-like. The test of metal, the strength, that making sure he's always there for others, even though he's just hiding in the shadows. They thought he wasn't there, but of course he's there. He's always a presence. And so I reckon this is all leading up into what we're about to get now, with Kit and the Phantom working together, showing what it's like to be the Phantom. Getting on the job training, if you will.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm still not sure I completely understand the purpose of the Jungle Trek flashback.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether that...
Well, when they're climbing a cliff face
it's a part of the story. Yeah, like if they have to reclimb that, okay, that might make sense. But right now, where I am right now, on the second week of March, I don't understand why we've gotten the chain retelling, then the Jungle Trek retelling, then we've got some quality father-son time stuck in that middle of the movie or the middle of the book where it's the quiet bit just before we get to the end zone or something. So
the third act.
Yeah, the third act. I'm not really quite sure where we're going with it.
That's fantastic. If you knew exactly where we were going with it, you go, oh, okay, right, I know where the next month of stories is going. So I don't mind that. And the scene you've got up at the moment, Germ, which is the panel from the 6th of March, I liked that too, in terms of bringing the Phantom's End story, or the Rack and Ruin series, continuing on with that, with the Phantom just ticking away. Well, I don't know that I ever do want to meet Manju Kit, because in my version of my history, or my future history with her, she's a really good shot. Yeah. And I don't need her to snipe me.
Yeah. So just quickly, what are your thoughts on the art? This is something that I think we discussed before, is I think his artwork will grow on a lot of fans. Now, maybe some people have just gotten over whinging about the fact that we've now got a change of artists, but there doesn't seem to be as much whinging from other fans as what there was a month to a month and a half ago. All artists take a little while to get into it. As the famous story goes, Cy Barry had his first couple of weeks rejected of work that he had to go and redraw.
But, I mean, what a challenge for a new artist coming onto the strip too. Not only do you have to try and maintain some sort of sense of continuity between, the past artists, which is what Cy Barry had to do. So Brett Blevins has got the challenge of not being Mike Manley to start with. And then the plot that he's handed says, okay, about 3 weeks in now, you've got to replicate the art of Wilson McCoy. And 2 weeks after that, you've got to replicate the art of Paul Ryan when we do that flashback. All right, have at it now. Make your own style and make sure everybody enjoys your artwork. I mean, what a challenge for Brett that he's picked up. I mean, of all stories, for crying out loud. Well, let's I guess, reserve judgment again. The jury might be out further, and I'm going to need a telescope to see him by the time we get to our April podcast, perhaps. But who knows? Maybe I'm looking forward to seeing how this continues to go and the verdict comes in. I'm still holding out faith, because I love Tony DePaul as an author, and over the fullness of his stories, I think they tend to bring me back in. So we'll see how this one goes. All right, the other story that Tony's got going at the moment, and that is with Jeff Weigel as the artist for the Sundays, and that is the Commander Will See You Now. I'm really liking this rejigging, this modernisation of the Unknown Commander. So just to talk through it, we've had the Unknown Commander send in a construction crew or a refurb crew into the headquarters of the Jungle Patrol to redo the offices, and basically what we're seeing is the well and the tunnel and the safe is being revamped to the point where now we've got the Phantom has got his own studio set up in the Skull Cave, where he's going to be able to create videos in a lighting set that makes sure that he's not seen, and send videos into the Jungle Patrol to provide the orders. He's got the office completely rejigged. And so the safe is still where it was. I did like this one. Sorry, just as Germ goes through the YouTube, is to remind me of where we're at. As the Phantom is writing up the story of what he's doing at the moment, we have a little fourth wall moment where Lee Falk peeks over his shoulder and the Phantom goes, who the heck was that? So we're continuing with that idea of Lee Falk popping up through the Sunday story. And then, Colonel Warraboo and the other members of the Jungle Patrol, particularly Captain Weeks, going into the Jungle Patrol's new, the Unknown Commander's new office, which they're exploring to see what the refurb looks like. We've got new bookshelves, we've got a modern office space, we've got a bust, which is intriguing. I'm sure we'll talk at depth about that. We've got downlights, we've got, of course, microphones and hidden cameras so that the Phantom can actually watch their every move while they're in his office. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And they're continuing to look around the office and check out the bookshelves.
Much like the Daily Story, I don't know where this is heading. Is it really necessary? I'm not really sure. Like, I love the focus on the Jungle Patrol. I think the Jungle Patrol is vastly underutilized in fandom stories. Maybe this is going to enable the Jungle Patrol to be a more efficient, elite, fighting, peacemaking organization. But I don't know if it's necessary. Or could it have just been done quicker? Like, could have you got rid of the first 2 months and just had these guys coming in and just saying, "Oh yeah, we're here to demolish the Unknown Commander's room," and then they're like, "Whoa, do we need to see John X? Do we need to see all that stuff at the beginning?" I don't know.
Yeah, I think we did. We needed to warm it up.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is one of the things that I like about the shorter stories with the Phantom N stories that being 22 pages is that I think sometimes they're a little bit more punchier and we can kind of get to the point a little bit more. I like the idea of the stuff being in the Unknown Commander's place. I'm intrigued on who this bust is. I'm intrigued on some of the stories behind the flag, the treasure chest, and I feel like that flag, I've seen that flag somewhere. I feel like I know that emblem from somewhere, maybe from a past Lee Falk story. If someone goes in and moves one of those books, instead of it leaning this way and then it leaning that way, then the Phantom's going to have to do the same on his thing before he can do his cross. And I don't know. There's just too much stuff that can go wrong.
No one's going in there. No one will be allowed in there.
Well, and Colonel Warraboo's making that exact point here in the Sunday from the 10th of March, isn't he? That you won't be coming in here, Captain Weeks. If there's anyone knocking on the door, it'll be me, chain of command.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if it was me, I would go in there, move a couple of books, just to kind of.
That's why you're not in the Jungle Patrols, yeah.
I don't follow the rules.
Well, and I love the last panel here on the 10th of March. Colonel Warraboo is going through the books, and there's all of these highfalutin, Latin books and classics and all the rest of it. Captain Weeks says, "Gosh, Colonel, we've got patrolmen around here who move their lips when they read the comics." So, nice.
Is that a bit of a swipe at people who are having a crack at us?
Yeah. And let's just say Homer there is not Homer Simpson as well.
No, correct.
Like, are we trying to be too clever in this story plot?
Oh, I think I think that sometimes, and I've been wondering probably the last couple, maybe 3 to 6 months, do we as fans expect our creators to be too clever? And similar to what I was saying about Shane before, do they then go, right, we need to be really clever about this? And you go, oh, crikey, that's a bit much. You've got a continuity there. That, oh, gee, do I recognize that flag from somewhere? Oh, where was that tribe from? Does that tie in? Da, 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 da. That's what we love about the fandom. It's something unique to our character. But then when creators do it, you go, oh, gee, wow, now I need to really concentrate on what I'm doing. I'm moving my lips while I'm trying to pronounce the words here. So it's an up and a down, isn't it?
Yeah. You can never please us Phantom fans.
Look, we might move from there into the news section of the pod. And there's a nice little segue, a very happy little segue into that, because we've just talked about the change of artists in the dailies. And as much as the art of Brett Blevins might be growing on people and starting to appeal to people, the bad news for Brett, I guess, but the good news all round is that Mike Manley is starting to make a really positive recovery from the medical dramas that he's had. And if you want to follow along with those, Mike's pretty open and honest and upfront on his Facebook page and the socials as to what's going on in his world. So I'm not going to delve into that. You can go and check that out for yourself, and go and follow Mike on Facebook. But the good news is we've seen in the last 24 hours or so that he's being really positive in terms of his recovery, and has announced actually that he's back into the Phantom scripts. So he made the announcement that he has got his first month of the script for the next story that he's drawing, and announced that his story is going to be released in about June, which was an interesting one when it comes to the length of the chain story, potentially going all that way, or is there going to be another short story squeezed in? The good news is that Mike's feeling better, and I think a lot of people might have been wondering, is he ever going to get back to the Phantom? The answer seems to be yes.
Good to have you back on board, but well done, Brett, for filling in.
Overall, as much as you can kind of make a positive from, some terrible moment in Mike's life, is that seeing people like Scott Conn and Brett Blevins fill in the role for Mike, over the last year or so, has been a real positive. It's been great to be able to see that the strip has continued. It would have been very, very easy for the strip to just end. So we must give Brett, Scott, and Mike, and some of the other guys at KFS and Tourney and Jeff, who also filled in as well, a huge round of applause for being able to ensure that the comic strip had continued. What I'm intrigued about is, you talked about the June date. I'm wondering if Brett's that far ahead, or they're going to say, well, okay, this is when the story ends, so Brett continues, and then it gives Mike that little bit extra time to be able to get that much more further ahead. I think from memory, Jeff is usually 6 months in advance. I think there's been mentioned on this podcast a few times. Yeah. So, this enables Mike to be able to say, well, okay, look, here's your first month. You've now got a 3-month window to be able to, and then hopefully he can kind of keep that. So, I'm sure there's been some clever planning around that, and hopefully.
Well, we know that as he was ill last year, there were times, we think, where the deadline must have got pretty close to the wind, especially how rushed some of Brett's artwork looked and that sort of stuff. There probably wasn't a lot of fat there. So to use this opportunity where you've essentially got 2 artists on the books to go, right, let's get right ahead up where Tony DePaul's scripts are, only makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a good choice.
Mm-hmm. All right. So speaking of things that King Features are doing at the moment, their affiliate is the Comics Kingdom website, and they've recently redesigned the website. Now, you guys use the Comics Kingdom website a lot more than I do. What are your thoughts on the redesign?
So I often use it on my phone. A big tick at the moment is for the Sundays. You can see the art as the artist intended. So you see that as we had them up before, got the title panel in the top left-hand corner, and everything's flows on like a Sunday story should. But there's a negative that goes on with that in the moment. With the dailies, 2 things could happen. Sometimes if it's a panel by panel story where there's no real link, then it'll be like you're scrolling. So panel 1 will be at the top, panel 2, and if there's 3 or 4, they'll be underneath. So you're scrolling it up and down. I guess what the kids do with their online comics. However, not all comics or not all strips are like that. Some of them are one long panel. And unfortunately, what I've found is I'm unable to see the whole art as the artist intended. And that goes in some way for the panel by panel parts too, but I can live with that. But when it comes to the one single long panel, I've got to scroll around to know what the hell's going on and to read what's going on
Like
left hand side to the
like
right
a double
side.
scroll.
Yeah, which I don't appreciate. Now with the Sunday, like I said, I like how it's you see the art as Jeff has intended. However, it's on a phone. I find the screen's too small, and it's not allowing me to expand the panels to
By pinching.
to picture it. Now, it does say to turn your phone sideways. Now, it says to do that as well when you've got the long panels, but still, if I remember correctly, it doesn't show the whole single panel. When you do it with the Sunday, in fact, I'll do it right now. So I've got it right in front of me. So don't know if you can see that. So you can see it all there, and I guess you can scroll. You can scroll back and forward to read it. But it's a phone; it's quite small. It'd be great if you could tap it or something so the picture comes out, and you could. Oh, there we go. It's going to make a fool out of me and blow up. But now it's blown up, and now I've got to try and find how to. Oh, how come I can't go that way? Oh, I've actually got to move the. Oh, you see how I'm getting?
Yeah.
You've got to move the actual page across. Now, over in the corner here, it's got flip your phone sideways and you'll get a better deal. Oh, right. Yeah, so I'll flip my phone sideways. Okay. All of a sudden, it's all squashed and stretched.
Yeah, right.
Not the way the artist had intended. I guess you can read it now that I've done it, but I don't like how just say we're a fickle bunch, or you give us something that we want, and then we'll pick it apart and say it's bad. I don't think it's necessarily bad. It just could be better. It's still a little bit clunky for my.
Does it read better than last time though? Than the last design, in your opinion?
I might have got used to the old design. The old design, you could tap on the art, or tap on the story, and then you could blow it up and you could turn it sideways and it wouldn't get distorted. You had that opportunity to do that. That'll be 100 times better. Like, I'm wearing my glasses, so I can probably read it, but I want it blown up so I can read it properly.
Now
that's my critique.
Yeah, it is hard to be able to have like a landscape image display well on a portrait phone. So there is a lot of technology things that are going against it. So I think it's probably about halfway there. I think it's a little bit better than the last one, but there's still a lot of improvements. It could be done. I'd
be a bit nicer and say 3/4. I just opened up a moment ago when you were talking about the Sunday. I opened up the website on the computer, and it looks great. It looks fantastic, particularly because you can see the art as the artist intended. And if I scroll down for the dailies, the strips are side by side. They're nice and clear. On a computer screen, no problem. I think that looks great. On a phone, I'm 60%, maybe saying 3/4 was a bit rich.
Yeah. And we know that most people really, and particularly I'm thinking of the feedback we've had from some of our Indian listeners, are going to be accessing the Comics Kingdom website via that smaller device, via that handheld device, rather than a laptop or a desktop.
So it might be better using an iPad or something like that, a tablet.
Yeah,
because they're bigger, got the bigger screen. But on a phone,
we don't know what the web stats are for the Comics Kingdom website. For our website, Chronicle Chamber, you are looking at about half. So half of the people that look at it are on the computer screen, and the other half are on a mobile or a tablet. As an educated guess, I would say it's probably 10-15% on either side of that. So
Yeah.
you're looking at, roughly that. We are looking at doing a bit of a video review from a few of us on the Comics Kingdom website. I've got a few things that I'm not completely happy with, but I think I might wait for the review to that. The positives is the fact that the archive system is easier to access. So that's like your past stories. You can access stories all the way to the 40s. That's a lot better to read and access than what it was last time. And if you are a paid subscriber, you can actually read the stories a week in advance. So that is another positive.
I really, really like that. And the reason why I really like that is because being in Australia, until the update, we'd always be getting our dailies a day behind, or the afternoon of rather than the morning. Now we can read it in the morning. On Saturday morning, I can read the Saturday morning strip rather than having to wait for Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
It's certainly a nice incentive that they've got to encourage people to subscribe. Certainly, I'm a little bit on the fence about that because I don't know. It just seems weird to be able to read it into the future. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm controlling
yeah.
myself. I'm not reading into the future. I'm just reading whatever today's is.
Right. Okay.
That's why I was a little bit. When we were talking about the chain story before, I was a little bit fumbling because I hadn't actually read past Saturday up till.
And look, it certainly works for our purposes, doesn't it? Because we can review the daily story a week ahead of time, gives us time to edit that and have it produced live.
Yes. We will do a video review, and I think we're going to get like a couple of us. So like Steve might focus on his mobile, and so a couple of different opinions and some of the features and stuff like that. So that will probably come out in a week or so. Where we will pull it apart a little bit more.
Righto. All right, so there's big changes afoot on the King's Comic website, and whether they continue to take on feedback and continue to update, we'll see how that goes. Other phantom institutions that have got a bit of a change, a bit of a redesign, a bit of a recalibration is our local publisher here in Australia, Frew Publications, and quite famously, I suppose, the Frew crew of Renee White and Glenn Ford took over Frew when the Shepherds basically got out of it after being an institution in Frew for themselves for a long, long time. Obviously, with Dudley Hogarth being the bridge, I was publisher through. Glenn Ford, who has been listed as a director of Frew for the past 8 years, has taken a bit of a step back, and we've released a post on that on our webpage, and you can go and read that in detail to see. But basically, the upshot is that he's gone from being listed as a director in the Frew credits on each issue to being an art director. And our understanding of that is that basically he's gone to part-time instead of full-time, and that his job now is to finish off the commissioning of the stories that he'd started, but not to start commissioning any new stories for Frew. So, the changes that he in particular has overseen, and so many of the artists we've talked about today, your Shane Foley's, your Paul Masons, Grange Wallace, Glenn Lumsden, even all of these, Jason Paulos, Jeremy McPherson, like the list goes on and on. All of these Australian artists, and some from international as well, Peter Anderson, Andreas Eriksson to a point, who have come on board for Frew stories. Glenn Ford brought them on board. It looks like we're shifting away from that model now, which is an absolute shame for those guys. I know that, I'm speculating. This is where we start to speculate, don't we? And that's our job here, I suppose. It looks like the source of the stories is going to change from those truly Frew created stories to outsourcing. And as we said in the article that we wrote, Lightning Strikes from Ireland, Wicks from Germany have both posted on their socials about the fact that their stories are going to be sold to other publishers. We're putting two and two together to come up with 5 perhaps or 4, and suggesting that one of those other publishers might be Frew, and we're going to start to see Frew publish more of those stories from those international producers. So that's the story as we know it. Guys, what are your thoughts on the impact of this, what it means for Frew? Glenn, if I'll put my hand up and say, Glenn, I think he has done an outstanding job, and personally I'm a bit disappointed to see that this is the case, and we're going to start moving in that slightly different direction. But that's my opinion. What are your thoughts?
before Germ really starts going, I just want to say I think it's fine that we've got other publishers, selling the stuff off. We've been having the Swedish stuff for decades now, and the Frew stuff is now going over to Phantom. So getting stuff from other publishers, I think is fine. Now Germ's just had a drink. I think he's prepared. Let's see. Well, let him go.
This is something that we were aware of for a while, but out of respect, we hadn't said anything until we noticed a change actually, and the change has actually got the credits in the Frew comic. And then this is just a peek behind the curtain. We talked to Glenn, and then we talked to Dudley, and we gave them a preview of the post that we wrote and said, this is what we're going to say. So that's just the kind of like, we're totally upfront, nothing to hide. Personally, worked with Glenn. I've, done things with Glenn. I've previewed things for Glenn and, all that type of stuff. And then on the flip side, I've also had negative experiences with Renee personally. So I am very biased. I will say that up front. But I'm very, very concerned where the future of Frew is going. I think the immediate future is going to be okay because Glenn is finishing up all of the stories that are already being commissioned and already being created. And then you've got well over 200 stories by Phantom Men that haven't been published yet. And let's just say there'll be at least 100 good stories. So at 26 issues, that's 5, 6, 7 years worth of good stories. You've got, say, you've probably got another 10, 20 Frew stories. So there's another year, maybe 2 years. You've got Lightning Strikes. They've got a two-parter story, and then they've got there's about 10 stories altogether. So there's almost another half a year. Wick, you're going to be having 20 odd stories that could be published, and then you got the Italian ones. You've got a minimum of 5 years of quality that could still be created. However, my problem is what are we going to see after that? That's where I'm concerned. Is this just look, let's just press pause on creating the stories and let's kind of get some more, maybe there's like a pot, of money for that. And so maybe when we've got all these stories created and then you've published the stories, then you can kind of maybe go more like the Team Phantom Men model where they have a budget every year for the stories that are being created. And Andreas talked about that in 2 podcasts ago, 274, if you wanted to go back and kind of get a bit of an idea from there. Or are we just going to go back to what we were before Frew Crew, where we're just going to have Team Phantom Men stories and Lee Falk stories being created? So I'm a little bit concerned where we're heading. I understand that they can't, we're looking at the long game. I can understand why they're not really going to be discussing it in the Phantom comic, and because that's just suicide doing that. But what are we going to do about the 2000th issue, which is coming up this year? The 2000th number, which is coming up the next year. Are they still going to be going to Supernova? What about all those type of things, which was really pushing the Phantom in today's Australian environment? How's that going to affect Phantom Men, where last year they published more Frew stories than what they did actually Team Phantom Men stories? So is there also going to be a flow-on effect with them where they're not going to be able to produce as many news stories as what they have in the last couple of years? So look, a lot of questions. I don't expect any answers straight away. I feel for everyone involved. Look, let's face it, Glenn's not getting any younger. He had a health scare a couple of years ago. He needs to look after himself. Maybe this is a lifestyle change. If it is, you can't blame him. But yeah, there's a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. And as I said before, I am very biased. I worry about the future of the Frew comic if it's just being managed by Renee White.
I think we're only a couple of steps away from seeing the claw again. If you all remember the claw from a number of years ago, that on the cover, going back over we've talked about the file cards off off screen before we started. And we're getting towards the stage where it was the Shepherds beginning to drop off, or Steve Shepherd coming in, and it was after Jim passed away. But even just before that happened, things were going down, and Steve revitalised things a bit. Then the Frew crew really pumped things up. We got these Australian creators. We saw fantastic covers. We've been seeing these people, people like Shane Foley and you listed up a whole bunch, do these quality stories, these absolute fantastic stories, which didn't exist before the Frew crew came along. There was an excitement in there, an energy in the air in regards to the Phantom. Australian comic creators are looking at Frew to get themselves in. And it was great space to be in. I'm worried because the tribe that they've been serving up at the moment with his Italian rubbish has me worried. If to save a few dollars, now granted, it's not my money, it's Renee's money, but it's our comic, not his. Figure out your marketing, figure out your budgets, do all that. They give us a quality product and not this rubbish, this Italian murder that we've been seeing this last month, because that's been crap.
Look, I agree with what you guys are saying. There is that concern, and I guess there is always a concern when you've enjoyed what you're seeing and then there's change, and we just don't know what that's going to look like, and we're all got our fingers crossed and holding our breath as each issue comes out at the moment. I've got some confidence that while Dudley is still there, that he knows what he's doing, and he's been through a change and previously, and hopefully can continue the course, but he can only work with what he's provided as well. One of the things that will disappoint me, I think, about the direction without Glenn Ford being as heavily involved is the non-comic stuff, if you like, and Glenn's got a long history going back to Phantom Zone times of producing Phantom merch and extras and that sort of thing. And Fanfare, we saw produce his own stuff there. I loved how he brought that attitude to Frew when he came on board there, and whether it's the folio sets, the file cards Steve mentioned, he was integral in bringing that on board. The posters, we've already started to see the posters disappear and not being produced as much anymore. The trading cards, all of these things, the folders, all of this stuff that Frew have produced, the messenger bags, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that has started to drop away. And without Glenn there, I don't think we'll see any of that stuff anymore. So I've enjoyed seeing those extras that Frew have produced, and I just don't see that will continue without Glenn on deck.
I do hope that if Glenn, he's entitled to his retirement, but I do hope that another art director who's passionate and has the energy can come in and keep things rolling.
Dudley's a great publisher, and this is the thing that I like about Dudley is he's the motor. He gets the job done. He gets the fortnightly comic out. He gets all that type of stuff, and he manages to be able to keep Glenn like, no, let's get this comic done. And he does that great. He makes sure that people are paid, but he's not an artist. He's not, hasn't been reading the Phantom for as long as what Glenn has. He doesn't have that relationship as what Glenn does with the creators. If a creator comes with a story, is Dudley going to be able to say, well, hang on, you've kind of missed this little bit of Phantom lore here, and we need to intersect there. Can Dudley then be a art director or an editor or a Phantom lore editor? I worry about that being put on to Dudley, as well as trying to get a fortnightly comic out of 26 times of the year. So yeah, you're right, Stephen. There needs to be someone who can fill Glenn's shoes.
Well, I guess it all remains to be seen where that goes, and we'll all be, as I said before, crossing our fingers and holding our breath and hoping that it all goes as well. We wish Glenn all the best, of course, but we, as Steve said, this is our comic. We've been reading it our entire lives, and we get a bit antsy when there's change. We were all worried when Jim died, and then Steve took over, and that ran out of steam, and then we didn't see a comic at all for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it was, and there was general panic amongst the Phantom population. So we can get a bit antsy. We'll wait and see, I suppose. All right, other publishers around the world, and let's go on a bit more of a positive note. Farman in Sweden having their best cover for 2023 competition. The link is on our Facebook page. It is on our Facebook page. You can use that to get to our web page, which is where the actual link will be. And you can go and vote for the comics there. So that's really just a bit of information for everyone. Germ, I know you always encourage everybody around the world to vote, whether you subscribe or get the comic or not.
Yeah, and look, the beauty about voting for the best cover is that you don't have to have a comic to be able to have a vote or an opinion. It's an image. You can look at it on Fandom Wiki. You can look at it on the website. In the running for a prize, which they will send to you, even if you live in India, USA, Australia, or Timbuktu.
Very good. So get involved with that one. That typically closes at the end of March. I haven't got the closing date in front of me. Germ, is it long? 4th of April. Okay. So still a couple of weeks by the time this goes live. 4th of April 2024. If you're listening to this before that date, jump on the website and vote. Sad news coming out of America. Jose Delbo, who was an assistant for Cy Barry on the dailies, and actually had some credited story art for Charlton as well, has passed away. And I guess we're just at that stage, aren't we? Where we're going to see a lot of the silver age of comics artists start to go. They're into their 90s, and I touch wood every time I think about it. We're still so lucky to have Cy Barry kicking along with us, and it's sad to see his contemporaries passing by the wayside. But that is just the nature of the passing of time, I suppose.
So I really enjoyed writing the article about Jose because it forced you to kind of research a little bit about him, look at what era and stories that he wrote that he drew with Cy Barry, and then as we were exploring that, we found he actually drew a Charlton story, which only became public knowledge probably about 3 or 4 years ago. There was this story that no one knew who drew it. And then Andreas Eriksson and a couple of other fans joined a few little dots. And then I think it was Andreas actually emailed him and said, "Oh, by any chance, did you draw this story?" And he goes, yeah, I drew that story. And then, we kind of knew about it. But for a long time, no one knew about it before. So it was nice to kind of bring that to everyone's attention.
All right. Well, I know we're bouncing around at the moment, but if we go to Spain, Dolman Editorial are holding a poll for Phantom merchandise. Now, this is a great opportunity. I just talked about Frew and the comic extras that they published and or produced, and getting a bit of merch available. You can see from behind myself and Germ, and Steve's not his fandom room, but we all do love a bit of fandom merch. This is an opportunity we can get ahead of the game and actually tell a producer what we'd like to see. So once again, if you can go to the website, follow the post, the link in the post there, you'll be able to go to that producer and have a say in the sort of merch that you might be interested in purchasing.
Some of the images and ideas are kind of cool as well.
They are, aren't they? Well, while we're in Europe, we go over to Norway. There's a Mad Magazine artist art exhibition, and including some Phantom theme covers for sale. Now, again, Jerm, you've written the article for that one. A lot of interesting stuff over there.
It's not a Phantom. It's not for Phantom, but he drew covers for Mad Magazine for the Norwegian edition of the Mad Magazine, and there was a couple of Phantom themed covers. Donald Duck dressed up as the Phantom and Diana on their wedding night is another one. I really like that Donald Duck one. I think they were selling it for about 2,000 Australian after currency exchange and everything, which isn't a bad price.
$20 Australian after your conversation with your wife.
Yeah, exactly. $20 after, yes. But I believe at least one of those covers has actually been sold because of our article. So that's pretty cool. Is a thanks to Christian, I believe it was, who helped brought that news to our attention as well. So look, always happy to promote artists who are having expeditions or anything like that, or if you've got a whole bunch of artwork for sale, get in contact with us and we're more than happy to spruce it on our website and socials.
back to America. Hermes have got their colouring in book, the Phantom colouring in book. We've discussed that on the podcast before, but you can pre-order that now. Once again, you can go to our website and follow the links from the post there, or of course you can go straight to Hermes Press and bugger our Google ratings up completely. But the point being, you can pre-order that Phantom colouring in book now.
I'm intrigued by this, featuring other people's artwork, but they've all been redrawn by someone else using their style. So it's not Cy Barry, Lou Manor, Sal Veluto, Keith Williams. It's not their work that's been, I guess, simplified for a colouring in book like what we saw Frew do.
Yes.
It's actually a local artist has gone, okay, I want you to draw 4 Cy Barry style images. I want you to draw 4 Ray Moore style images and then include them. So I'm intrigued how she is going to do it, or how she's going to stylize them so it looks like Ray Moore, so it looks like Cy Barry, so it looks like Wilson McCoy. Is it just going to become...
One thing we do know about Hermes is that the product they produce, irrespective of what you think about the content, but the product they produce is, we know it's going to be a good looking book, and it'll be well put together. As you say, I'm also intrigued to see what the content of it looks like. Sure, you'll be picking it up and getting the crayons out to colour it in?
I'll get 2 copies, one to draw in and the other one to keep in pristine condition.
Well, you could scan it and then get AI to colour it in for you, following on from our last discussion. It is worth...
fun in that. I'd scan it so I can do it colour in different ways myself.
It is worth making mention that Hermes has done colouring in books with some of their other titles as well. So, they've got history and they know what they're doing with colouring in books.
And to round out the news today, just to mention for certainly all of our Australian listeners and viewers, the comic convention dates. Now, you put together a really comprehensive article about that, Germ, about what's going on in 2024 as far as Phantom-related comic conventions. We know that Supernova is always a big one. The Comic Con is the other one. So the central point for, I suppose, the Supernova tour will be Sydney for a lot of people. We know that Matt Kime, Alex Tripp, Jamie Johnson, Ash Nichols are all going to be there. I'm excited to hear, Ash Tabernichols, I should have said. I'm excited to see him at a Supernova. Hopefully there'll be a booth. We're not sure whether he'll actually have playable games going. I think that's the plan. I really hope that we can start to see the early drafts of the games and have a bit of a play there. And then, of course, the Melbourne Comic Con, Grange Wallace, we know will be there. He's the local. Matt Kime again, and Ash with the game is planning on being at the Comic Con as well. So certainly, I guess the message from us, as always, is make sure you get to your local convention and support the Phantom creators.
Absolutely. I'll be doing my best to get to, well, at least to the Melbourne ones, and I'll see what we can do for Sydney.
Yeah. We always like to keep that as up to date as possible. Jerm, you've got your finger on the pulse with this stuff, so I'm sure you'll be updating things as we go.
Yeah, exactly. So we will update the list as we learn about artists who will be attending. Most of the time, the list kind of isn't there until like a couple of weeks in advance. Are you guys going to Sydney this year?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I can't commit just at this stage. I'd like to. We'll see how we go. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, well, I'm going. My wife cheated and got me the plane ticket flights as my birthday present, which is kind of smart when you think about it. Like, she knows I'm going, so she's kind of saved herself the money by saying, oh, well, look, here, have it as a birthday present. So, yeah.
Does she know that now that money you personally have saved on the plane tickets now just disappears into the Phantom room?
Here I can say, well, now we've saved $600 or $700. That means I've got extra money to spend.
Correct.
It's a very good point, Dan.
Well, when you tell her that, do not let her know that was my idea.
She's actually just messaged me, so obviously we're talking very loud because she can hear what I'm saying. And she said no.
All right. Well, make sure you head across to our website, chroniclechamber.com. All of the news that we've talked about today hits there first. And if you've got any tips or, and Jerm's mentioned people bringing news to our attention, if you can email us at chroniclechamber@gmail.com. If you've got anything going on or if you're aware of anything that we should be aware of and can share, we'd love to hear from you in that way. And of course, if you've got any comments or notes about what we've talked about today, you can either hit us up on the socials or email us there as well. We love to hear your thoughts. We're a by the fans, for the fans type of dealio, and we'd love to be able to provide your input into what's going on. Of course, as I said at the top of the show, you can subscribe to us via YouTube or via any of your favourite podcast apps. And as I said, please make sure that you're following, liking, subscribing, getting notifications, all of that sort of stuff. So thanks again for being part of Expand the Fandom podcast. Please get in contact with us if you've got anything going on. And as always, happy fandoming.
Happy fandoming, everyone.